from being one filmmaker who just did it his way. He was a maverick, to now all of a sudden like rethinking everything and second guessing himself.
I think fans misunderstand their own emotion because they think that they're mad that Lucas sold out and went from being a maverick.
So we're slowly trudging our way through the difficult debate of how original or how derivative Robert Jordan was in terms of Wheel of Time vis-a-vis other writers such as Stephen King, George R.R. Martin, and of course Tolkien and Frank Herbert. And the stance I'm going to take here is, well, whatever we think about Jordan himself in Wheel of Time, I think we can say with a lot of confidence, well, it's better than Star Wars. So for those who are unaware of the controversy, this has been a big debate between Dune fans and Star Wars fans, or fans of both mythologies, that, yeah, it looks pretty clear-cut that George Lucas almost completely copied and or stole the Dune mythology and inserted it into Star Wars. Now, I've tried to show, and I'll continue to show, Robert Jordan seemed to be doing the same thing, whether with the Aiel, the backstory of Wheel of Time, certain major characters, the Bene Gesserit, basically are the Aes Sedai, so on and so forth. It feels like, yeah, he kind of did a Lucas, but I would say, at least for Jordan's defense, it is very Lucas-like. It's very similar, but it's not identical, and I think Lucas went to an extreme. That is not to say that Lucas doesn't have his own virtues or doesn't have things you can put on his behalf. I think you can speak very highly of him if you're being very selective. And we're going to hear a partisan, Rick Worley, go on and on about the good side of George Lucas.
The communication potential of it. When George Lucas talks about Star Wars being like a silent film, this is exactly what he's talking about.
But this is the kind of sequence where you can actually turn the sound off and pretty much follow the story and understand that the film is really working as an exercise in moving images more than it is, the dialogue or the more traditional ways of telling a story. All Star Wars films are really based on the theory and practice of silent movies, and they're designed to be silent movies. It's basically visual storytelling with a musical, emotional underpinning, and that's the way they work. A lot of the dialogue is really more lyrics to a song than actual dialogue that you normally see in a movie.
It's exactly because the dialogue is incidental and you can watch the films without understanding it that people react to Star Wars across cultures, across ages, in such a primal way.
I'm not denying that George Lucas puts in a lot of work and effort into his respective stories. He clearly does. He really, really is very obsessed and focused on certain things in terms of audio or visual presentation of Star Wars. And to be fair, he's been consistent on this in terms of making sure the sound quality, the crispness of image, and so on and so forth is very top-notch, right? He was one of the first to use digital cameras with first Phantom Menace and then Attack of the Clones. He couldn't use digital technology completely, so a lot of Phantom Menace is on film, but he did try to get some sequences totally done on digital. Now, I myself don't care about this. I actually think digital is a very mixed blessing, but whatever else, Lucas has been sort of consistent there that he wants the images and sound to be of a certain quality and to be of a certain kind. Now, getting to the originality question, which Rick Worley defends, I find that utterly incredible and groundless. And ironically, Rick Worley himself shows this because in another essay, he thoroughly goes through how much Star Wars has borrowed or taken from various films and novels, including Dune. He even has a little section where he admits, yes, a lot of Star Wars is based on Dune. It's based on various comic books, a French comic book actually. It is based on a lot of prior sources, a lot of prior films, Flash Gordon, Kurosawa films. We all know this. And it's very, very heavy. So you're kind of stunned here because whatever else, I think Robert Jordan did at least try to work out a very complex mythology. It may be very derivative, but it is a complex mythology on its own terms. And I think for the most part, it does make sense. I have my criticisms of it and things I really still can't understand or believe, but at least he put in an effort to make a complex mythology, even if it is derivative. Lucas really never did that. And to be fair, with the first film, he was really taxed. I mean, he was physically, financially, as well as psychologically being pushed to the limit. So him not getting everything in the first film or knowing the whole story straight, that's acceptable. And I would even grant yes, stealing the story, because at the time he was a struggling filmmaker, was acceptable. What is not acceptable is when Star Wars was a big financial success and it was a major critical success, which he now denies. But no, a lot of critics actually loved Star Wars when it first came out. Then things get tricky. He should have done certain things to apologize or compensate those he took things from. He did do that with Kurosawa, to be fair, but with a lot of other people, he basically forgot them or just denied vehemently he ever took or stole anything, even though there's pretty blatant evidence he did steal things and took things and borrowed things, and he never got permission from the rights holders or the creators. He never went to the Tolkien estate, or much less Tolkien himself. He never went to Frank Herbert or the Frank Herbert estate. He just took these things and just passed it off as his own. And he's continued to do that a lot of times. He never ever mentions the sources he explicitly borrows from, except when it's safe, like Kurosawa or Flash Gordon. It's a very, very mixed bag. And Robert Jordan is on record that he also denies he took anything from Dune, even though the Aiel and the Fremen seem very identical. He swears, yes, it does look similar. It looks bad, but he did his own research on Native American cultures, and that's what we're seeing with the Aiel. Do I believe him? Well, I'm going to be consistent. Like Lucas, no, I don't believe a single word. I could believe that maybe subconsciously it's not a direct theft, and maybe he read Dune and certain aspects were in his brain, but he did do his own homework. That's more believable, but the idea that he didn't really consult Dune at all is really shocking, because that is Rand's central story, is he's a young farm boy who becomes a messiah. Now, that's not in Dune, because Paul Atreides is a nobleman when he begins. The farm boy story is from Star Wars, so he kind of mixed Star Wars with Dune to create his own mythology, which is his prerogative. It is what it is. Writers are very opportunistic. I would, however, think that in terms of historians as well as even fans, we want to be accurate about what did and didn't happen, and clearly there's a lot of Wheel of Time that is really basically based on other sources, and I'm much more of a Dark Tower fan and much more George R. R. Martin fan, but I would concede there are definitely aspects there that are definitely borrowed from Dune, whether the Dothraki or even setting the Dark Tower in kind of apocalyptic desert setting is very obviously mirroring Dune. So it does seem everyone's borrowing from Dune or stealing from Dune, no matter how you slice it. But I think with George, it did go to such an extreme. We can't go back in time, but I think labeling him an original genius is going way too far. You can definitely credit him with many things and many virtues and many positive aspects to his writing and directing, but saying it's original is going a little bit too far. But on the plus side, he does make a lot of other people, including Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin, look really, really modest in comparison in terms of stealing or borrowing from the Dune mythology.
The studios and everything said, well, wow, we can make a lot of money. This is a license to kill. And they did it. They just simply, and of course the only way you can really do that is not take chances. Only do something that's proven. Let's not do any, we've got to remember Star Wars came from nowhere. There was nothing like it. Now, if you do anything that's not a sequel, or not a TV series, or it doesn't look like one, they won't do it. That's the downside of Star Wars, and it really shows an enormous lack of imagination. This lack of imagination and fear of creativity on the part of an industry.
It's hard for people to realize, and I'm not supposed to say this, and I wasn't supposed to say it then, but, you know, it's a film for 12-year-olds.
Older fans like to say that this isn't true, and then they wax nostalgic about the olden days when Star Wars was darker and more mature.
In the not-so-distant future on a planet called Earth, it's Underoos.
Star Wars Boba Fett is here. That means Darth Vader's always near. C-3PO is lots of style. And R2-D2 just makes me smile. Star Wars Underoos are here, yeah! Something out of sight in underwear.
Don't be so ridiculous, R2. Underoos are for Earthlings.
Yeah, remember those serious adult times for Star Wars? You know, what actually happened is that the fans got older but kept liking the same movies.
No point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber